Okay, we have a quorum now, so we can actually get started. Call the meeting to order. Is there any agenda review? Anything to discuss? Nothing tonight? Okay. Before we start on the actual hearing for the tax cap and the budget committee, I'd just like to go over the warrant articles that you'll be voting on in March. There's 3 collective bargaining agreements on the warrant. One for the teachers, one for the support staff, and one for the administrators. The main difference in the collective bargaining agreements that we negotiated was a change in the health care plan that the employees are on. We're going to what's called a consumer-driven plan, which gives the employees, the consumers, more options to decide where and who's going to provide their services to save money. The plans are relatively new for the district, but they've been around for about 10 years. And overall, we feel that it's going to save the district some money. The employees in each one of the groups will be paying a portion of the premiums going forward as well, and that's part of the negotiated contract. The support staff and the administrators are 3-year contracts, and the teachers are a 4-year contract. So those you'll be voting on. After each one of the contract warrants, there's a separate warrant article that states if the warrant for the contract is defeated, it gives the school board the authority to reopen negotiations and bring a new proposal back to the taxpayers. We hope that doesn't happen. If the warrant articles for the collective bargaining agreements do pass, then the other articles are null and void because they're no longer needed. We also have on the warrant, besides the overall budget, we have the warrant article for the $60,000 that we ask for the turf field fund. The turf field, if you know, has about a 10 to 12-year lifespan. The replacement cost is $700,000 to $750,000, and we're asking the taxpayers to put away from year-end fund balances, if there is any, a maximum is $60,000 into the account. And at the end of 12 years, we have the $720,000 plus interest to pay for that field when it needs to be replaced. So it won't be a big hit for the taxpayers at that point in time. The other warrant article on there is our standard $200,000 maintenance warrant article that we use every year to prioritize the non-regular maintenance issues, boiler replacements, roof replacements, things like that, that have to be done to maintain the properties that we have here in the district. So those are the warrant articles that you're going to be voting on. The other 2 warrant articles are the 2 we're going to discuss tonight. They're both petition warrant articles. The first one is the tax cap warrant article, and this was modified. They may be just.
Oh, is that the budget?
Yeah, the budget. I think they might be backwards on that, but that's okay. Okay, Article 12. We're going to go back. We're going to do Article 12 first, and then go backwards to Article 11. Article 12 is the tax cap warrant article, and it was initially proposed. It was initially proposed restrictions on developing a school budget that would result in no greater than 2% increase in the amount to be raised by local taxes. In other words, a 2% tax cap. At the deliberative session, the 2% was amended to 25%. However, the school board is opposed conceptually to the tax cap, regardless of the amount. School districts are required to budget based on the gross amount, which is the total cost to deliver programs and services. However, you will recall in our discussions about taxes that the district's revenue, the number of students from each town, state aid, and the cooperative formula all combine to determine a local assessment. Each town was solely responsible for its portion of the whole. A tax cap of 2% as originally written would have been devastating for our schools. The school board would have no choice other than to consider cutting athletic programs, extracurricular activities, and even academic programs that are not mandated by the state. With this constraint, we would also very likely have to consider reducing teachers, which would increase class sizes. With the limitation a 2% cap would impose over the long term, we would also be in the position to consider closing some schools. I know there'll be discussion later on about the RSA itself, which allows the governing body of the school district, which is the people at the deliberative session, to override the 2% tax cap. We're opposed, regardless whether it's 2% or 25%, we're opposed to the concept of the 2% tax cap anyway. If it can easily be overridden by the few people that show up at the deliberative session, it makes little sense. So we've been opposed to the tax cap right along. And in looking at the tax increases over the last several years, we feel that we've been able to produce a reasonably a reasonable budget for the size of this district. And I know there's the actual tax and assessment is a little bit different, but the gross budget increases since 2010 or 2011, the budget increase that year was 4.78%. Following year was 1%. The budget increase the year after was 1.19%, 0.094%, 2.19%, 1.86%, 2.13%, 3.79%, and the proposed budget is 3.27%. The proposed budget, and each one of those increases is also affected by the fact that the state of New Hampshire has taken away funding for the New Hampshire retirement system. Back prior to 2010, the state funded 35% of the required teachers' contribution for the district. In 2010, 2011, they reduced that from 35% to 25%. 2011, 2012, they reduced the amount we paid from 25% that the state paid from 25% to 0. And they continue to pay 0 toward the New Hampshire retirement system. At the same time, the rate that the school district pays for the teachers' retirement system has increased from 11.3% to 17.8%. And most of that is due to the unfunded liability for the retirement system, which now is about $5 billion. It's grown over the years, partially due to mismanagement, and fortunately that's on a better track now. However, the local taxpayers are footing the bill to pay that. Since 2011, the state has passed those costs on to the district, and the district taxpayers have paid $5,254,000 in additional taxes that the state is no longer paying. That's part of our bottom line budget. So the increases that you heard, and even this year's increase of 3.27%, would only be 1.83% if the state funded the retirement system this year. So all of the increases that we're seeing over the years is certainly not reflective of the budget that we're putting together, but a lot of it has to do with the state itself. The other piece that the state has done is that they've decided that they're going to take away our stabilization grant money. Stabilization money is to help the less property wealthy towns each year. Ossipee, Effingham, and Brookfield are the 3 towns in the district that get stabilization money. The reduction is 4% a year for the next 25 years. Ossipee takes the biggest hit on that because their stabilization money in fiscal year 2016, before they started reducing it, was $1,018,969. That's being reduced by 4% a year for 25 years. The net result and the cumulative total over 25 years for Ossipee is a tax hit of $11,961,285 over 25 years. Effingham is $4,207,000, and Brookfield is $728,000, for a cumulative total of reduced state funding of $17,896,000. So these are numbers that the state is taking out of your pocket as taxpayers. The 2% tax cap, again, makes little sense. We're putting together very frugal budgets. We're providing the services necessary to the school district and to provide our kids with an excellent education. And if the state would come back and step up to the plate and pay their portion, our budgets would not be what they are today. So that's the tax cap, and I entertain any comments on the tax cap itself. Diane, go ahead.
Do you have a hand up? You didn't mention that it was amended. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you kept saying 2% tax cap.
2%, but it was amended to 25.
Right,
But
and,
I did say that, right?
oh, you've had this. My name's Diane Smith. I live in Brookfield, and I submitted both petition warrant articles. I authored the one on the Budget Committee, and a colleague or collaborator of mine did the one on the tax cap. The handout that I provided to you, and I've given this to you folks before, is it's a graphic on the front of the Wentworth School District local tax burden. And I'll pause just for a moment. The tax cap, as I think Jack had mentioned, is not on the total budget. It would have been on the, or it would be, if it passes, on the local tax burden from the local communities to support the Wentworth School District. At the deliberative session, the voters chose to change that 2% to 25%, in effect rendering it meaningless and silly, and I hope that everybody votes no, because it's meaningless. But I wanted to call attention to the fact on this graph that the person who authored this was concerned that over time the consumer price index had only increased at about 2% or less per year over a 10-year period, and that's the blue line. The red line is and it's a little confusing because it's a percentage of change, it's not actual numbers, but these represent the variations from year to year in the change in the cost from the previous year. That change is what it's representing. My concern, and one of the reasons that I stood behind this warrant article when it was 2%, although frankly I thought that was a bit low, is in the last, since 2016, the percent increase sent to the local communities was all way above 2%. It was 5.9%, 5.1, 6.4, and in the coming year it's proposed to be 3.2%. So, and on the back side is simply the data that supports this, this graphic. So I will have some other comments when I have an opportunity to review the Budget Committee warrant article. But I too concur with what I believe is the assessment of the school board, and that it's not worth supporting at the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Any other questions on the tax cap at this point? Okay, we do urge you to vote against the tax cap. Doesn't make any sense. Okay, Article 11 was also amended at the deliberative session. and what you'll be voting on Article 11, to see if the Governor Wentworth Regional School District will vote to create a budget committee wherein said committee would serve in an advisory-only capacity to the Governor Wentworth Regional School District School Board, and of 5 members plus 1 member of the school board. The school board will appoint the initial members within 30 days of the election, including the member from the school board. And the advisory committee members' terms will expire at the next annual meeting, at which point the school board may reappoint. Again, we're suggesting that that is not approved either at the voting booth. We're against that whole the school budget committee article. The original petition, as I said, was amended. The school board doesn't recommend this article. It's not the first time it's been brought as a warrant article. The most recent time was in 2010, and the article was defeated resoundingly, 2,293 to 1,691. The school board is elected by the people to operate the schools. Taxpayers already have their chosen representatives in place. Because of their involvement with the programs, they are in the best position to make the judgments about what reasonable needs are. A budget committee is just another layer of government, is not in a position to make judgments about the legal needs and appropriate programs for children. They do not have enough involvement to make informed decisions. The school board holds several meetings where the budget is discussed and questions and input are welcome. Meetings where budget is specifically discussed start in the fall with 3 finance committee meetings, during which administration meets with the finance committee to discuss their recommendations, followed by the preliminary budget hearing, the budget adoption hearing, and the deliberative session. All school board meetings, including these, are open to the public. Thus, any citizen can express their opinion in the budget development process. The budget committee provides a layer between the school board and the construction of the budget, giving individual community members less of a vote. GWRSD is an SB2 district where everyone has a vote on the budget, plus an open meeting to make changes in it prior to the actual vote. A budget committee can have the impact of lessening the value of the individual vote by taking away the opportunity to vote on certain items removed or altered by a budget committee. In other words, every citizen has a vote through their vote, a voice through their vote, and the voice need not be filtered by another layer of government bureaucracy. The board again urges a no vote on Article 11, which is the budget committee article. And any questions or comments on that? Diane?
These 2 warrant articles, as one of the folks in Brookfield mentioned when we had the hearing such as this in Brookfield, are symptomatic of a concern in the, for lack of a better term, the property poor towns for the financial burden that they perceive they bear. And so my approach in drafting the budget committee was that I felt that another set of eyes, somewhat independent of the responsibilities, the full responsibilities, and it's actually, I looked into it, it's rather mind-boggling, the responsibilities that the school board has. And not to say that they can't do both those responsibilities and the budget, but 5 of the 6 towns in the school district have budget committees. Brookfield is the only one that does not have one. And it's a rather common occurrence in the public arena in New Hampshire. And I felt that having an additional set of eyes with with a bit independence, with a representative from each community, would be a good idea. At the deliberative session, changing that to an advisory group and having it for 1 year and a smaller group, in my opinion, is not advisable and a waste of time. But nonetheless, it still leaves the issue of the feeling that there is an unfair burden on the property poor towns. So I've provided for you a graphic, and I won't spend an awful lot of time with this. It's somewhat self-explanatory, I hope. The table beneath supports the graphic above. But what it illustrates, because there was some discussion about the cost per student per town in the earlier hearings, and I was uncomfortable with that. And so what I've done in this instance is simply relate it to a property value of $200,000, and that happens to be just about the average in Brookfield, and looking at what the rates translate into dollars per student. And in Brookfield, as you'll see, it's almost $34 per student per year for somebody that is paying on a $200,000 assessed value. And it goes from there, and I won't run through the whole graphic. And since I presented this at the last hearing, I realized that it's a number to bring it down to human scale, but I've attached to this another graphic, and I will provide this to the board so that sorry, I should have done that up front. My apologies. And the second page is a representation of the same information, but in terms of the tax rates. And again, I hope it's self-explanatory, but it illustrates, the point here is if there was a different cost distribution, right now, as you probably all know, it's 25% equalized valuation and 75% ADM, and that is on the net cost of the school district. That is the gross cost, the budget costs, less all the revenues, and then that net number gets distributed on that formula, 25-75. If it were distributed on 100% EV, that's what these graphics represent in slightly different ways. But that second page is just tax rates. It's not dollars, and it's not a personalized, this is the money out of your pocket sort of example. I've added in this, and this is the same graphic that we put in our report that we produced in Brookfield 2 years ago by the Services Review Committee. We've included in this, though, the overall cost to a community in these bar graphs. In the far right-hand side, in green shading, is the adequacy or the state grants. Because if those disappeared, it gives you the magnitude of the cost to each community, so that there's an understanding of what the real costs are, and then how those costs are divvied up for that particular community. The variance is quite dramatic. The property poor towns end up in a better position, and by a fairly large margin, and the property rich towns do take a hit in terms of actual dollars. It is far less, however, than for the property poor towns. And back to the Budget Committee, I concur with the board that it should not be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Appreciate it. Any other questions? I want to urge you, I also, I think you have a copy of the budget that was presented at the deliberative session. If you have any questions on that, please give us a call. Our numbers are available, email accounts are available for you. We're here to answer any questions that you have between now and voting in March. So certainly feel free to call us and ask whatever questions you might have that come up. And if there's no other comment, I think we're done. So on that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, I think.
So moved. Second.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Appreciate you coming out. Thank you very much.